Christmas lunch with Charlie and his son Stuart. A few weeks before, when Peg mentioned we'd been invited, she said that it was about time she had a meal somewhere else, and that she was sick of these four walls, and it would be good to go out. She said for years she's been providing Charlie with 5 dinners every week, and 2 dinners and teas each weekend, so it'd be a change for him to cook. Hang on a minute, is this the same woman that doesn't ever go out for a meal because she can't taste or smell anything, and doesn't like seeing people enjoying their meals? The same woman who, when we last went out for a meal with her, made a scene and shouted, "How much? I can cook a whole Sunday dinner for 12 people for that money." Curious, I asked if Charlie had ever invited her to his house for a meal since we last went for Christmas lunch some 15 years ago. She admitted he had, but she preferred her cooking. James and I never forgot the first and only time we went to Charlie's on that Christmas day. It was when she could still taste things, and Harry was still alive and reasonably portable. Completely devoid of any sort of social graces, between them Harry and Peg unwittingly managed to sabotage Charlie's every effort to stage the supreme Christmas lunch. The dear chap had been up since the early hours working on his chef d'oeuvre, but our culinary experience of massive slices of moist turkey and other meats, plus over 20 types of vegetables, was eclipsed by the appalling behaviour of the 2 principal guests. Harry, who by this time was used to Peg waiting on him and cutting up his food. Peg had obviously decided to have a day off, and sat like a crumpled, sulky doll, stuck to her chair, face a mask of distaste and loathing, her beady eyes taking in each and every serving dish, prodding the contents disparagingly, and waiting for someone else to serve her. The knife and fork were too heavy, the plate too hot, her serviette was ugly, and she was too low down in her seat. It was Harry, however, who stole the show. Charlie put some meat, roast potatoes and gravy on his plate, and I think he also had a valiant stab at offloading just a few of the vegetables. Harry, serviette round his neck, looked uncomfortably pink and sweaty, eyes rolling wildly, lips slavering, shouting at Peg, as though it was her fault. "Don't overface me, Peg." She got to her feet and scraped off half his meal into a random serving dish, dollops of gravy and spatterings of veg littering the festive tablecloth, with a, "Why did you cook so much vegetables? What a waste, you're bloody stupid doing so many." She cut up Harry's food, and he sloshed it half-heartedly around his plate, while continuing to protest that he was given too much. In between mouthfuls, Peg continued a monologuing rant. "The gravy tastes horrible, it's very greasy, you know. Ah, take that brown meat off me plate. By Christ, these potatoes are as hard as the hobs of hell. How long did you cook the sprouts for? They're blinking hard too." Wiping down Harry's chin and neck at the end of the meal, she said, "Well, I'm sorry, Charlie. We could have done with a quarter of this, and it really did put us off our food. We should have gone to my house." Charlie was crestfallen, and James and I resolved never to repeat this experience. So it was with some trepidation that we faced this Christmas meal. A lot of water had gone under the bridge since our last one. Harry had died some years before, and Peg's health had suffered to such a degree that she had become a consummate professional in the art of being ill, with an impressive array of ailments weekly added to her portfolio. Bent almost double, she seemingly had trouble walking, was an insomniac, and despite her comfortable waterbed, had never had so much pain in her life. I'd give anything to be well." She was getting increasingly forgetful and losing her powers of reasoning, but masked it with displays of aggression if challenged. She tried hard to be reasonable and sweet during our visits, but sometimes it was a struggle for her. She was as demanding as she was generous, as vicious as she was kindly, as naive as she was opinionated. Charlie had a skin like a rhino, and had put up with Peg's behaviour for over 27 years. But that last supper 15 years ago showed that she had the power to find a rare chink in his armour. He was a saint, and without him she would have difficulty functioning. He barely missed a day in coming to see her, take her shopping, to the doctors, etc. However, his passivity allowed her mania and bullying to grow and flourish. She alternated between screaming at him for being clumsy or getting the wrong kind of bread, and crying with pity when she saw a cute little animal on the television. We had therefore prepared ourselves for Peg to be her usual ungracious self, but we were a bit concerned about how Charlie's son would react. The roads were white with snow, and Charlie's drive was cleared, but the walkway from the car was narrow, and Peg's sandals had managed to scoop up some snow. You could ask why she wasn't wearing suitable footwear, boots, or even shoes, but suffice it to say that her legs and feet were so bad that she couldn't get anything to fit. We knocked on the door. What's taken him so long? Hasn't he even unlocked the door yet?" Charlie smiled as he opened the door, but Peg just said, "Why did you lock the door?" without smiling, and it took her about 5 minutes of tiny little steps, face writhed in agony, to get into the lounge. She immediately went into grouchy old cow mode, and after having tried the special chair Charlie brought in for her, launched herself off it and shouted that it was too hard for the back of her legs. "It's killing me, legs and back." She then grudgingly accepted a softer chair where she sat, crumpled up like a poisoned dwarf, not saying anything, face contorted with misery, staring down at the floor. The smell of the turkey was very enticing. Their house was as old-fashioned as I remembered it, but it was warm and very, very comfortable. There were loads and loads of Christmas cards, and Charlie and Stuart went out of their way to make us welcome. The room was like a pantomime stage set, all twinkling lights and Christmas tree, the tray put ready with sherry glasses on, and a discreet stack of bottles standing to attention, ready for the guests to make their choice. It was obvious that so much careful thought had gone into making this day very special. Stuart was shorter and tubbier than I remembered, a bit like a Christmas gnome. Looking back, Peg had more than a passing resemblance to a pantomime dame, wig askew, eyebrows painted with a quizzical expression. She was like a queen bee with Charlie buzzing around her. Widow Twankey predictably declined a drink, but along with Charlie and Stuart I had a Glenmorangie, and James had a can of Fanta. I kept glancing over at Peg to see if she was going to make any attempt at joining in the festivities, but it seemed like the more she was indulged, the more she moped, and tried to make everyone else feel uncomfortable because they were so obviously comfortable. It was as though she had been forced to come along and have a last meal before being executed at dawn. Stuart, in many ways more phlegmatic than Charlie, took it all in good part, and never seemed in the least put out by this virtuoso performance. "I didn't have a very good night last night," she continued to offer, by way of an excuse. While Charlie flitted in and out of the kitchen, James and I made conversation with Stuart, which wasn't difficult, as he was an interesting person. The spotlight off her, Peg thrashed about ostentatiously in her chair. I'm just like this in me bed at night, and it all down me side, it's killing me." We talked about the North York Moors Railway and steam engines, about computers and the weather. Charlie rattled some pans in the distant kitchen. Peg hunched up even more and pulled her sleeves over her hands. Oh God, she's going to tell us she's cold now. The gas fire hadn't been lit for years, but between them Charlie and Stuart managed to coax it into life. She said, "I just press a button on my fire and it lights." "Yours must be a very old one." Charlie sat at Peg's feet and made an attempt at conversation before giving up and announcing that lunch was ready.